Thank you very much, Chandradasa, Namo Buddhaya, Jai Bhim. It's very good to be with you all this evening. It's a great honour, actually, to have been asked to, as Chandradasa said, give a Dharma talk. I was very moved. I can't really add to what's been said so beautifully by other people about the effect of hearing about the deaths and the terrible plight of Indian order members. So I won't add to that because, yes, Chandradasa asked me to give a Dharma talk. And you might not know, but I actually lived in India. I haven't lived in India for a long time because of my own limitations. But I did live in India for quite a long time, and in Maharashtra especially. And Maharashtra is being hit very, very hard by COVID. And there's quite a bit of my heart in Maharashtra. I probably learnt more about the Dharma from Indian order members and mitras and friends than probably anybody else other than Bhante Sangharakshita. And I thought it's very important that we do things properly. So we must start in a proper way by honouring the Buddha, Baba Saheb Ambedkar and Bhante. So I'm going to ask David, first of all, to come forward to make offerings to the Buddha and Padmasambhava. And then Vidyadhaka to offer to Bodhisattva Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar. And Prajna Hridaya to offer to an image of our beloved Bhante Urgyen Sangharakshita. Thank you very much. Those who identify with the battered and the beaten, mark them as saints, for they dwell in the divine. Their heart is soft on the outside and soft on the inside. Say, it's like butter. For they hold the forsaken close to their heart. They treat the enslaved as their own. Tucker says, I won't be tired of repeating, such a person is the divine in person. That was a free translation of an Abhanga by Sant Tukaram, a great Bhakti sant of Maharashtra, translated from old Marathi. It's a bit of a free rendering, I have to admit, but it came to my mind over the last few days. It came to my mind because of this sense of identifying. His verses, a real saint is someone who identifies with the battered, with the beaten, with the forsaken, with the outcast, with the downtrodden. And the person who is a real saint, their heart is soft. Their heart is soft on the inside, soft on the outside. Say it's like butter, says Tukaram. And this all was coming to my mind in the last few days. And it was coming to my mind because I was asking myself in meditation, I was asking myself in times of reflection, I was asking myself after hearing from Chandradasa, what is really the essence of this life, of this Dhamma life, of this spiritual life? What is it that we're really doing? Where are we really going? What is the end? What is the middle? What is the beginning? What is this life really about? And I think I was being told what it was really about from the responses to brothers and sisters in India, and knowing how my brothers and sisters in India are, the example that they've given me. What we're really doing, beginning, middle, and end, from the beginning of the path to the end of the path, what we are aiming to do is to become as responsive as possible. It's all about responsiveness. And there's this very, very beautiful word in Pali and Sanskrit, which used to be used quite a lot in our movement, perhaps not so much. I first heard it from Bhante in seminar when we were studying the Sigalavadasutta seminar. It's this beautiful word, anukampa. Anukampa. Anukampa means to shake with, to quake with, to tremble with. That's Dharma life, from the beginning into the middle and the end, all the way from now to enlightenment. It's learning to tremble with, on ever deeper levels, on ever wider levels, with every single other form of life, every single living being. That is what Dharma life really is, beginning, middle, and end. There is no other life. The great master Atisha, who did so much to take the Dhamma to Tibet, was once asked, what is the goal of the spiritual life? What is the goal of the Dharma life? What is the highest essence, if you like, of the spiritual life? And he said immediately, the goal of the spiritual life is the essence of voidness and compassion. The essence of voidness and compassion. One word, shunyata karuna garbha. The essence of voidness and compassion. That's all Dharma practice is for that end. Bhante in his seminar on this said, well, the essence of emptiness, voidness is compassion. And the essence of compassion is emptiness. This is nothing other than anukampa. This is nothing other than trembling with. Shunyata, emptiness, these have nothing to do with metaphysics and complicated mind trips and all sorts of weird philosophies. Nothing to do with that. It's all about trembling with, quaking with another. Self is always in relation to other. It's always in relation to other. And unless we're trembling with others, really taking them in, trembling with what's going on for them and responding absolutely accurately to their need, then there is no Dharma life. We're not there yet. We haven't started. Doesn't matter. You could have the most amazing meditations, most amazing kind of philosophical insights, but unless we're identifying with the battered and beaten, unless our hearts are soft like butter on the inside and the outside, so that there is nothing between us and others, we haven't started. We haven't even begun. And it is the start of the enlightenment path and the end of the enlightenment path. It's so very important to remember this. And actually you all are. Everybody is. I mean, I've been so was almost shocked in the positive sense by the incredible responsiveness of the Sangha, the incredible responsiveness to the Sangha, to our brothers and sisters in India. And it's so appropriate. I've been having a lot of memories of my time in Maharashtra, particularly in Bombay. I lived in Pune, I lived in Bombay, and I spent a lot of time in Nagpur. And I know some of the more obscure parts of Maharashtra. I never went to India as a tourist. I was entirely immersed in our Sangha in India when I lived there. So I know the sugar towns and railway towns of India pretty well as well. I know all those kinds of places. But when I lived in Bombay, for some reason, I've been thinking a lot about my time in Bombay, and I've been thinking a lot of memories about an order member named Bodhi Sen. Bodhi Sen, I don't know if Bodhi Sen's here tonight, but if any friends of Bodhi Sen are here tonight, can you please give him my Jai Bhim and tell him that I am remembering him and I honor him and I love him and I'm grateful to him. And what am I grateful to him for? I'm grateful to him because he taught me all about responsiveness. He was the living example of what Vajratara was talking about, those other examples of order members' responsiveness. So I was living in Bombay, and Bodhi Sen was one of the happiest people. He's one of the happiest people I've ever met in my life. He lived with his wife and children in one of the chawls. I think he's still there. I don't know if he's still living in these chawls, these sort of tenement blocks in downtown Bombay. And he would turn up every day where I was staying in the little community that we had. And he'd come to talk to me about the programs that we were going to do that week. Programs being the Karakram, the program being the Dharma talk, which we were doing all over Bombay because so many Buddhist localities in Bombay, so many Buddhist areas. And he'd come in and tell me all the different places we were going to that week, all the different things that he'd set up. And this would involve traveling very, very long distances on Bombay Municipal Transport, the local, as it's called, the suburban railway, BEST, was it Bombay surface transport, the buses, basically. Very, very rough travel. Anyway, one day, then he'd come round when we went to these places and we'd go off to teach. It was every night of the week. Anyway, one day I was ill. I'd gone down with some terrible fever, as you do in India, and I really felt at death's door. And I thought, well, I can't go to the program tonight. That's just not possible. And Bodhi Sen came round and said, come on, it's time to go. I said, Bodhi Sen, I've got a terribly high fever. I'm really ill. It was one of those, where you're really dizzy and you think you're you think you could die any minute. Bodhi Sen's face fell with such sadness and dismay. And he said, but Padmavajra, this is a new place. This is the sweeper colony in Bombay Central. This is a new place. We have to go. And I said, but Bodhi Sen, I'm dying. I'm really sick. I really don't think I can go. But Padmavajra, we have to go. Please, just come and sit. just come and sit, chant the refugees and precept, and then we'll go. Just please, and I said, okay, but we're not going by bus. That's fine. We're going by taxi and we're coming back by taxi. We had hardly any money, but I thought, well, I'm not going to make it if I go by bus. And we went, and of course, the people had transformed their slum into a paradise. Fairy lights everywhere, a beautiful shrine, incredible hospitality. And we sat down and I said to Bodhi Sen, I'll say a few words. And Bodhi Sen was my interpreter as well. And he could make my English into really down-to-earth Marathi, really communicating to the people exactly as they needed to hear it, making me better in my speaking. And the thing was, I just went on and on and on and on, and I know time's passing as we speak, and I was sort of ecstatic, and I learned something that evening about responding, about responsiveness. I learned something about responding to a man who was utterly in love with the Dharma and full of gratitude for the Dharma, full of the liberating Dhamma that Dr. Ambedkar and Bhante had transmitted him. And all he wanted to do, his whole life, was dedicated to sharing that as widely as possible. And the whole idea of having, as it were, personal needs, including sort of health needs, was completely absent, completely vanished. I could have done a thing, I'm really damaging myself through doing this, but I didn't damage myself. I got ecstatic. I got completely high giving that talk. I was in another dimension, combination, I guess, of fever, the incredible inspiration of the people, and the Dharma itself, the living Dhamma, and the feeling of tremendous devotion from the people. So responsiveness, anukampa, learning to tremble with one another, starting, yes, with our loved ones, and starting very, very strongly with our Sangha, with our spiritual community. Pabaloka has an enormous amount of history. We've been here since 1976. That's when it was founded by Sangharakshita. We feel this very, very strongly in the community. We're very grateful to everybody who's contributed to Pabaloka. We feel a very strong sense of tradition and sort of lineage. We're very, very conscious of that. We're not just making it up now. We benefit so much from, the responsiveness of all our brothers before us. And part of this history includes what is now our dining room, which is not used. Well, it's used for table tennis at the moment. It's not used because nobody's coming, and storing some of our stuff. But when it was a shrine room, there were very important lectures given in there by Sangharakshita. And one lecture that was given there, a very important lecture, which I've been rereading, is a lecture called A Case of Dysentery. A Case of Dysentery. And I was present at that lecture, given, I think, in 80 something, I think. It was an order weekend. We heard, Bhante's going to be giving a talk. Everybody needs to come on this order weekend. And he started off making jokes about the title. He thought it was, perhaps he thought it would look good in the talk catalogue, a case of diarrhea, a case of dysentery, rather than the symbolism of the tantric this and that. He thought it was a nice down-to-earth sort of title. And we were all laughing, and then it got very serious. It got very serious because he told the story of the Buddha and Ananda at Rajgriha or Shravasti, I forget where, going the rounds of the monks, their rooms, and finding a monk fallen in his own excrement, suffering from that terrible disease of dysentery. And the Buddha and Ananda immediately go to help him, and they ask him, well, is there no one to care for you? Why don't the brethren care for you? Why don't the other monks care for you? And he just says, because I am useless to them, Bhagwan. Because I am useless to them. So immediately the Buddha and Ananda clean him up, lay him on the bed, make him comfortable, bring him water. And then the Buddha gathers the monks and speaks very, very strongly to them. Well, first ask them, is this true? You've just left him because you feel he's useless. And they all say yes. And then the Buddha gives a very strong communication to them. And I'll mention that in a minute, what he says to them. But I've been thinking about that. That when Bhante gave that talk, he was very concerned about the neglect within the Sangha, our order at that time. We could be neglectful of one another. People didn't look out for each other, especially in communities. I think especially in men's communities, I should say, people could be left. But it's not like that now. And this is evidence of that. There's this tremendous responsiveness to the needs of people within the Sangha far away in India. It's very moving and inspiring to see the change of culture, the maturing within the Sangha, but I'm sure we don't always respond as we should. But there is that immediate response. And in this way, we really are following what our teacher, Bhante, in drawing our attention to that text, but also to the Buddha himself and to enlightenment itself. Enlightenment itself. There's a teaching called the Five Paths, which Bhante has sort of transformed into our system of practice, the 5 great stages of the path. And in that particular exposition, the final stage of the path is called the stage of no more learning, the stage of fulfillment, or the stage of spontaneity. Spontaneity, or spontaneous compassionate action. Spontaneity or spontaneous compassionate action. That's the end of the path. That's enlightenment. And, reading the seminar, Bhante then starts to talk about what that is. Wow, we're going to be told what enlightenment is. Incredible. What is this spontaneity? What is spontaneous compassionate activity? It's simply, you do what needs to be done. You do what needs to be done. For a Buddha, there is nothing between him and what needs to be done, because there is no ignorance, there is no confusion, there is no attachment, there is no fear, there's obviously no aversion. There's just a clear-sighted situation, a completely clear vision of the other. There is pure anukampa, pure trembling with, pure identification with the other person. And then there is immediate effective action, immediate effective activity, whether it be a Dharma teaching, a clear Dharma teaching, whether it be a meditation instruction, whether it be sitting in silence, whether it be being absorbed in meditation, whether it be tending the sickness of a monk who is neglected, whether it be tending to a mother insane with the loss of her child, whether it be a sweeper, an outcast, cowering against the wall when the Buddha comes into town and immediately sprinkling with him with the ambrosia of his blessing. This is enlightenment. This is what enlightenment really is. This is what liberation really is. We talk a lot about liberation and freedom. It's liberation into love. It's liberation into anukampa. That's real liberation. This is the liberation, the liberty that Dr. Ambedkar talks about, the complete freedom of movement between different communities, between different peoples. And especially we need to exemplify this in the Sangha. And it is so inspiring to see that this evening, so moving to be a part of this, what Bhante calls this vital mutual responsiveness. This is the way he defines, it's an early definition of going for refuge to the Sangha. We go for refuge from mere social contact to communication, which is a vital mutual responsiveness. Sometimes people puzzle over what the refuge is in the Sangha. What is the Sangha refuge? It's the vital mutual responsiveness. It's anukampa. It's trembling with. It's responding to each other's needs. It's responding to each other's inspirations. It's responding to each other's beauty, spiritual beauty. And yes, it's responding to each other's sickness and dying. Bhante, in his commentary on A Case of Dysentery, says some extraordinary things, very, very powerful things. And I want to read from him before I close. It is important that as members of the spiritual community, we realize that we have no true refuge except one another, no friends except one another, no real friends except spiritual friends. From the group, we can expect absolutely nothing, nor should we. We belong absolutely to the spiritual community, belong absolutely to one another. We should be prepared, therefore, to live and to die for one another. Otherwise, we've not really gone for refuge. Our future is one another's future. We are another's future. We have no future apart from one another. The Buddha says, if ye will not take care of each other, who else, I ask, will do so? If order members do not love one another, who else will love them? If order members do not inspire one another, who else will inspire them? If order members cannot be happy with one another, who else can they be happy with? If they cannot come together with one another, who else can they come together with? Perhaps we should enjoy one another's company more, appreciate one another more, value one another more. The Buddha certainly valued the monks highly. He says, brethren, he who would wait on me, let him wait on the sick. Or he who would serve the sick, he who would serve me, let him serve the sick. Bhante again, the Buddha is not being mystical or metaphysical here. He's dealing with the realities of life in the spiritual community. By the sick, he means sick members of the spiritual community. If one wants to wait upon the Buddha, one should wait upon them. Thus, the Buddha, in a sense, equates members of the spiritual community with himself. It would hardly be possible to value them more highly than that. Wow, that's incredible. The Buddha equates the members of the spiritual community with himself. So really serving and tending to one another. We're serving the Buddha. Interestingly enough, this story of the sick monk, I should just add a bit to it. In the Chinese Buddhist tradition, the story of the Buddha tending the sick monk is very, very important for the whole inspiration for healthcare among Chinese Buddhists. I was talking to a Chinese Buddhist scholar who showed me a photograph of a huge mural of the Buddha and Ananda tending the sick monk in a Buddhist hospital. And they take it that even just serving anybody who's sick, you're serving the Buddha. Incredible way of thinking about life, thinking about anukampa, thinking about trembling with one another. Perhaps every center should have a big mural of the Buddha tending, the Buddha and Ananda tending the sick monk, to remind us to really care for one another, all the time, not just for the special occasions, as it were, but all the time, in everything that we go through, in all our ups and downs. We need to have that tenderness towards one another, that anukampa, that trembling with, shaking with one another, making our hearts like butter, soft on the outside, soft on the inside. It's interesting, isn't it? The image of the Buddha, he's standing and he's walking among the monks. He's standing and kneeling and bending to tend to the sick monk with Ananda, his close friend and companion. In other words, the Buddha is active. He's the active Buddha. We tend to think of the Buddha, always think of the Buddha meditating. That's the typical image. But my goodness, think the Buddha walked and walked and walked the dust roads of India. He traveled, he went. There's a recurring line in the Pali Canon which says, I went to them and said, I went to them. I went to those people. Dr. Ambedkar, of course, was very inspired by this and, makes it very clear that the Buddhists, should be very active in communicating their Dharma. And they should feel that they're serving mankind through the communication of the Dharma. And at our center in Nagpur in Nagaloka, we've got a huge walking Buddha. This is so important that we remember this, that the Buddha is active out of this anukampa, this trembling with, this shaking with. And yes, we're manifesting that. We're manifesting that in our Sangha right now in relation to our brothers and sisters in India. The other day here on the retreat, we honored Dr. Ambedkar's birthday, rather modestly compared with India, but we did honor Baba Saheb's life. I told stories about Baba Saheb's life. And one of the things, of course, that is so important to understand about Dr. Ambedkar is that he believed he's the most practical man you could imagine, the most extraordinarily practical man you could imagine, hard-headed, a rationalist, working in education, trade unionism, politics, to the highest degree, intensely practical. And yet he knew very, very early on, deep in the heart, that the only way you could completely transform India, that you could remove the stigma of caste and untouchability. Yes, you change all the laws, of course you do, but you have to change the heart. And that could only happen through religious change. That could only happen through Dhamma revolution. That could only happen in that way. That's the only way you could get the deep cultural change. That's what the Dhamma revolution is. And that's what our order members and mitras and friends in India are doing in India. They're working for that Dhamma revolution to completely change the culture, a complete change of values and attitudes, underpinning all the social change that is going on. So we really need to support this, really need to support our Indian Dhamma brothers and sisters, because they're bringing the Dhamma back to its homeland. They're bringing the Dhamma back to the land of the Buddha. That's what they're doing. They're bringing the Buddha home, if you like, back to Maharashtra, back to all the states of India, actually. So let's remember the Buddha who walks. And I think it's appropriate to end with another poem, a Buddhist poem by a Dalit Buddhist, a great Maharashtrian poet, modern poet named Daya Pawar. I don't know the Marathi, unfortunately, and I wouldn't be able to say it, but here's a very beautiful translation of his poem called The Buddha, translated by Eleanor Elliott and Jayant Karave. I never see you in Jeta's garden, sitting with your eyes closed, meditating in the lotus position, or in the Ajanta and Ellora caves with your stone lips sewn shut, sleeping the last sleep of your life. I only see you walking, talking, breathing gently, healingly on the sorrows of the poor and the weak, going from hut to hut in the life-destroying darkness with a torch in your hand, giving their suffering, which drains their blood like a contagious disease, a whole new meaning. Thank you.